Hi everyone, this is Dean.
This is Aisha Sherzai. Good to be back. We haven't been on for a while.
Yeah, we were on a little hiatus trip.
Yes, we took a road trip up to Northern California all the way to Washington State. So Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for joining us here. Today we're talking about something that is very important in terms of its prevalence in our community and its link to diseases of the brain, not only of the brain, but the entire body. We wanted to talk about depression today.
We wanted to start the new year with this disease because it's the many names given to it. The king of all diseases, the master, the pivot point, whatever you want to call it. It's where everything starts. Motivation. If we ever want to talk about change, if we ever want to talk about lifestyle change, it starts with mental health and specifically depression. Mm-hmm. It's a disease that's quite prevalent, but not much is, a lot is spoken about it, but not in an organized way at the family and community level. So we wanted to kind of start the year with a short conversation about what we think about this disease and its importance and significance. It's said that the prevalence is about 1.5 to 3%. Many people believe that this is vastly underestimated. That says that about 3 million Americans, 3 to 6 million, suffer from this disease. But we believe it's the numbers are much worse. The definition varies, but the DSM-4 basically says that if somebody suffers from certain symptoms that we will list for up to 2 months continuously, they have depression. And there are different versions of it or different levels of it. Mm-hmm. There's cyclothymia, which is a vacillating form over a couple of months. There is depression with psychosis, where people actually start seeing things and hearing things, mm-hmm. And different seasonal affective disorders. But nonetheless,
perinatal depression.
Perinatal depression, exactly. But it is the most important component of cognition, because it's with this that we affect everything else. It's with depression and mood disorders that we make the landscape of health. We give all these talks on nutrition and exercise and compliance to medication and taking care of oneself and doing the well women check, health check at different parts of the screening levels. Mm-hmm. But if depression is not addressed, all of this is for naught. So it's really important for any physician, any healthcare provider, anybody who even deals with healthcare at any level, to take that into consideration first.
Absolutely. And, given the prevalence of depression, and knowing that it's actually a treatable disease, only about, and this is statistics, only about 1/3 of people who have depression actually get treatment. And the rest are either they never come up to the front, they never talk about it, they always keep it in, or it's essentially treated or looked upon as a disorder of a willpower. It's as if, it's something that's under people's control, but it's actually not. And it's very, very important for all of us to understand that from a societal perspective. There are a lot of great medication. There's a lot of data that if depression is treated appropriately and as early as possible, that the quality of life is better and the outcomes are better. But unfortunately, we don't see that.
That's actually the pivotal point we want to make. It's not about the next SNRI, the medications for depression. It's not about the next psychotherapeutic approach. It's about our perspective, our view of depression. I think that it's very important in every community that it's understood that it's not a problem of willpower. And the stigma has to be lifted. There's a tremendous stigma stopping people from talking about it, stopping families from talking about it. That stigma must be lifted. Mm-hmm. It's also believed that, it's not a disease, it's a problem that the person has that should by themselves, they should strap themselves by the bootstraps and get themselves out. It's not that simple. In fact, in many ways, it's the hardest of all diseases to treat. Absolutely. And a lot of times, the very thing that you ask the person to do, which is for them to get themselves, it's impossible because they're so deep into this disease that they cannot see themselves out of it. So that's where the families, the communities come in. Mm-hmm. That's where, before all that, understanding of this disease as a neurotransmitter problem, as a mechanical problem that must be addressed, not just from the person's perspective, but the family community perspective, is critical.
That's right.
And more importantly, the person shouldn't feel as though this is it's their fault, it's a stigma, and not made to feel that way. And with that perspective, that will definitely make a difference. Otherwise, it's a losing disease, it's a losing cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope. And these are not my words. There are a lot of great psychologists and psychiatrists and people in the field of mental health that keep on, persistently emphasizing the fact that depression is a disease, just like diabetes, just like high blood pressure. There's derangement of neurochemicals that doesn't work, and there's medication that actually can fix it. And if we approach it that way, I think a lot of people will be willing to come out to surface and get help and treatment. In our line of work, when it comes to cognitive impairment, the first and the foremost thing we do among our patients is to find out if there is depression or any mental health issues and hit it hard at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
We're talking about motivation. We're talking about taking charge of your life and your lifestyle and making important changes. If depression and anxiety and other mental health issues are not taken care of, the next step is almost impossible.
And to expect that pattern, the neurochemical pattern, to change overnight, or over a week, over months, is ridiculous. It's impossible. These are neurochemical pathways that have changed. It has taken many years for those neurochemical pathways to change. And it's almost like at a meta level. It's not even neurochemical. Thought processes, belief systems, and chemical pathways that have changed. Mm-hmm. It's going to take that long for it to reverse. Right. So there has to be patience. There has to be, if there's pharmaceutical assistance needed, that's fine. If it's lifestyle, behavioral things like exercise and nutrition, all that have to be added to it, which have been shown to be effective, mm-hmm. that's fine. But it has to be a multimodal, temporal approach to it over years, months to years, for it to really change. That requires everybody to be on board.
Yes.
All the support people, all the family members. It doesn't mean you're enabling. That's a different thing. You're actually understanding the mechanism and contributing to the bits and pieces of disentangling this weave that has woven itself over years. So that's critical that we take it with that perspective in mind. And it's not a blame, it's not a personal will thing, and it requires a lot of effort. Now let's take every other disease we're talking about: diabetes, heart disease, you name it. All of them require a person to take on significant lifestyle changes, from diet to exercise, which requires motivation, which requires incredible amounts of motivation. Mm-hmm. Myself, we are experts in this, and to get up in the morning, to exercise, and then to change the nutrition takes incredible amount of effort.
Absolutely.
Imagine if somebody has depression, and for a doctor sees the person and says, no, go ahead and change your lifestyle, change your diet, change your exercise. That's creating failure. That's a false expectation that actually creates tremendous number of failures in our community, because they go to the doctor and all the doctor says, change your diet. Mm-hmm. It's not that simple. It's multimodal, and we're repeating ourselves. But if at the end of this conversation, what comes out of this is that we have to understand that it's a chemical process. Mm-hmm. It's not a will process. There are mechanisms that have to be put in place. The support structure of the family and beyond have to come on board, and then and only then can we truly address it. I think we will have done a service.
Absolutely. It's a familial disease. It's a community's disease. It's something that everybody needs to be involved with. There are a lot of diseases that the person himself or herself due to their good mental health, can actually come up front and talk about it and seek help. But depression is something that that is not so, and the family needs to take the initiative to detangle some of the issues with the person suffering from it. And also, it's really important to know that, depression just doesn't mean sadness. There are a lot of other symptoms of depression that could, manifest itself. Things like, and this we were reading it from the National Mental Health website, things like, moving or talking slowly, feeling tired all the time, insomnia, not being able to sleep or sleeping too much, not being able to eat or eating too much.
Yes.
So there are variations in the symptoms of depression, and one needs to get help as soon as possible when these abnormalities surface.
Manifest. Absolutely. And ironically, depression, well, not ironically, we see it all the time. It can get so bad. Remember that one of the first things that it affects is attention. So it can get so bad that person can develop dementia. It's called pseudo dementia, where they can't think, they can't function, they can't even operate daily. We've had people that have come to the clinic with such degree of dementia that from beginning to the end of the sentence, they've lost themselves.
Exactly.
And they've been misdiagnosed, and they've gone through the system, but it was actually depression. And when it was treated appropriately and in a systematic manner, the cognition actually improved significantly.
Absolutely.
A lot of times, that's the case.
That's right.
So,
similarly with stroke patients,
exactly.
When they have depression after stroke, that's the first thing usually that is treated, that actually helps the patient do much better in physical therapy, in speech therapy, or whatever deficits that they may have. And I think it's very important to highlight that. And even for people who don't have any issues as of yet, it's important to bring it at some point with their primary care physician or whoever they see as a healthcare provider to talk about this thing and keep it as an open conversation. Because a lot of us go through these phases of having mental issues or depression depending on our environmental factors or family issues, and it's always to keep the door open for discussion, at least.
And one last thing, a lot of times people withdraw from families and friends as they're going through this. It's actually imperative that the families recognize that, and otherwise it's an infinite abyss. It just gets worse and worse. That the person is engaged and brought into the conversation. These are difficult conversations, but the conversation should not be abandoned. That's a critical point, that critical time that the families can get into this process.
Absolutely. And thank you, Dr. Darman, for your input. And you're absolutely right. The importance of understanding that willpower has no part in this, and that it's very difficult for patients with depression to actually initiate their path towards health, and that's why it's very important for the community to be very supportive in that journey.
Correct. A lot of the eating disorders, the recipe or the latest cure is start this diet or some other diet. It's not about the diet. It's about the depression that's underlying, that must be addressed first before you do anything when it comes to diet.
I had a patient who had some neurological problems, and he was in our clinic, and we kept on telling him, you need to lose weight, you need to eat well, you need to sleep well. And I remember him telling me one sentence that changed my perspective about my approach. He said, "Doctor, I have difficulty getting out of my bed in the morning because I feel sad and I don't have that willpower. Eating well, exercising is so far from where I am right now that I actually don't see myself going through that direction." So we initiated the treatment of depression before we could even tell him to eat healthy and take care of himself. And so that's really important.
So some action plans I think are important. One is identifying. All the families and communities, people should be aware of some of the symptoms, both the hard symptoms, which is sadness and crying and the things that most of us are familiar, but also some of the soft symptoms like sleeplessness, loss of appetite or excessive appetite or lack of movement and withdrawing. All these symptoms, you can go to the National Institute of Mental Health website or Mayo website and others, and we will actually have some of this on our site as well. identify and be familiarize yourself with these symptoms. Second thing is learn how to engage those with depression, and have an open conversation in your family and your community as far as depression is concerned, and that actually is the most effective thing.
Right.
An open path of conversation, an open doorway, an open venue of conversation is critical. And then having the same kind of conversation with your doctor, where if needed, medication is helpful, but it's not the only way. And psychotherapy or psychological therapy as an adjunct is very important.
Absolutely.
So familiarizing yourselves and the family about the symptoms and the path out of it is important, and acknowledging that this is, or accepting that this is not a disease of willpower, and it's a neurochemical disease that needs to be addressed as such.
And for those of us who have a loved one who's suffering from depression or any mental health issues, there are a lot of classes out there that one can attend, which essentially teaches you how to interact with a loved one, what kind of questions you need to ask them, what are the questions that you don't ask them.
The don't part is important, yes.
And what are some of the things that you do that, show them that you love and support them, because a lot of times the most difficult thing is to talk to somebody with depression, because a lot of times they don't want to feel helpless, they don't want to be a burden on anybody else. So there are a lot of classes that are offered. One organization that offers these classes is NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have different branches in different states, and we will put that information in our
TeamShare site.
In the TeamShares website under this particular post for you guys to go visit it. It's incredible, and a lot of our patients have actually, and patients' loved ones who take care of people with depression, have actually spoken very highly of those classes.
Absolutely. I hope this was of help. This was just the beginning, a primer about this disease, an awareness, and hopefully a paradigm shift conversation. So we'll have more conversations about this and similar disease processes. So
please give us your feedback, comment on the post. I know that a lot of you are interested in the topic. We will have more conversations about it. We would love for you to be involved in it. And thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you next week with a different topic at the same time.
thank you.
Have a great night.